Hi guys, nice to have you back for our next new feature lesson about the new features inside of Blender 2.91. My name is Helge Maus from pixeltrain. This time we want to talk about the new custom bevels and caps in curves and text in Blender 2.91. And as always, I want to add some more stuff. So this time we want to talk about curves, how they behave inside of Blender, and I hope this is useful for you. So let's get started. So I start here in our standard scene. I select everything with the A key, and with the X I delete because I want to have a clear scene for that. First, I want to talk with you really briefly about curves and how they behave and which options we normally have inside of Blender. And then we want to take a closer look to the new features here. So to add a curve here, we use the Add menu. You can use it here or Shift A. And if you look into my add menu for curves, you see I have a whole bunch of objects here. This is a free add-on which is shipped with Blender 2.91. It's named Extra Objects. And I like this a lot because we have some parametric options for all these curve types. Normally you only have, I think, Bezier circle, NURBS curve, NURBS circle, and the path. But now you have a little bit more. So if you go, for example, here to polygon AB, you will see that you have a polygon AB. I go with the 7 key of my numpad to the top. Then you have in these options here values, which I like a lot. If you come, for example, from Cinema 4D, where splines and curves are really strong, you have these parametric options here, which you can add. You also can switch the curve type if you like here. Really nice, but keep in mind this is only for the creation of the curve. Later you can't change these values anymore because they are not parametric objects inside of Blender. But what they are now able to do is you can work with them really cool. So the first thing which you maybe see here is that this here seems to be filled, and it is a curve. You see here there's a curve symbol. You also see here in the object data that this here is a curve. And the reason why it's filled is that this is a 2D curve. We can switch between 2D and 3D curves inside of Blender. So if you have a 2D curve and try to move this point, I'm in the edit mode at the moment, up and down, you see it doesn't work because it's a 2D curve. But if you have a closed 2D curve, and this here is closed, you directly see this plane here. This is one way of generating something which is renderable here. And if you want to open a curve, you have to deactivate the Cyclic option, so Alt-C, or you can go here in the options under Active Spline. Here is the Cyclic option, and if you open this up now, this is open, like you see here, and now you don't have this plane here anymore. If you are in the 3D mode, same options here. You can close it and open it, but you don't see this plane here. Because what you're now able to do is you can select, for example, your point and move it up here in space. So that's the difference between 2D and 3D curves here. Let's talk a little bit about, and for this I think I open it with Alt-C, about a curve itself. So what you have here now are curve points, and they are interpolated here. You see it here on the points themselves. If you press the V key on your keyboard, like you normally do in the animation curves, you can change the handle type. You have automatic, free, aligned, and so on. And what I really often do to work a little bit more convenient inside of curves, I switch here to the tweak tool, which is behind here the selections. And if you now click something here, you directly can move this point around. You also directly can change here the tangents if you like. So a really convenient way. You also can add points if you like. So if you go now here and hold down here the command key, so I select here the first point, command key, and right mouse button click, you see you now add here this side, and you also can select this point, command right mouse button click, and you can also add points here. So it's really fast with the tweak tool here to add points if you like. Another way of adding points normally is that you, let's go to 2D so it looks a little bit nicer. You select a point and press the E key like extrude, and then you extrude points out. So that's the same idea. And I think there's also, yeah, here's an extrude tool. So if you have a point selected, go here to the extrude tool, you get this ring here and also this yellow thing. So inside the ring you can drag and you extrude in every direction. If you press here the yellow one, you are holding the direction of the point before. So that's some options here to add points. Another option of adding points is selecting, let's go back here, some points. So for this, I go back here to my selection box. These 2 points, you can use the right mouse button click for subdividing, and then you get points here in the middle of your selection. I think that's enough about adding points and removing them. If you want to remove X key, vertex or segment, it's the same thing like you're used to do in Blender. Let's go into the curve options now themselves, because here is a little bit of magic. So the curves themselves can be interpolated here. So this is the resolution of a curve. So if you do something with the curve and it looks jagged, you can increase this here. For the rendering, if it's 0, then it uses this value here. If you want to have a higher value, then you can insert it here. Like I've said, 0 means the same value like in the preview here. Then we have talked a little bit about closing and opening. Let's go here to the geometry section, because I told you at the beginning that we have 2 ways of adding geometry. One is 2D curve, cyclic, it's a plane. But if you have a 3D curve or so, you want to have more control. It works in 2D and 3D at the same time, so these options are the same. So we have here under geometry an extrude. So we can extrude a curve up and down. You see it like this. You also can use a taper object. If you want to move it in or out, you can use here the offset if you like. Then we have additionally to this extrude here a bevel, and the interesting thing is, let's take this point here and move it a little bit here and close the whole thing with Alt E. Now you see it looks like this here, but this is still an extrude. So what you see here now is that this is a 2D shape again, and it's extruded, and because it's 2D, it's closed here. And like I've told you, you can't move these points up and down here, so you can't have a wave here. If you are in 3D, you only see the walls. So this is the limitation of the 3D. But what you can do now is you can, beside of extruding, you can go here to the bevels. And if you bevel something, you normally get a rounding here, and you bevel now the curve here. You get a rounding here. It also works if you don't have extruded it at all. Then it looks like this here. And here comes the area where the new features are now living. So if you round this here with the bevel, you get something like this here. And the interesting thing is that we have now a separate resolution for this. It's really important now. If you want to use the new profiles, you see the profile is at the moment at 4. I open this so I can show it better to you. Yeah, here. You now see that we have here these jagged edges, and the reason for this is that our resolution is with 4 really low. So if you increase that now, you see you get a finer rounding here, because this bevel is in resolution now of 10. What you also can do is you can start and end mapping, and this is really often used for animation, and everything which has a dot here on the right side is animatable, so you can really make also motion graphics with that. And now we want to look into the new options here. So in the older versions of Blender, so 2.9, we had only round an object where we can have a bevel object here. But now we have here a new section which is a profile. And you know profiles from my new feature videos of 2.9 where we had these in the bevel modifier. Now we have the same stuff here. And you see our preset here is a linear curve, and for bringing this to work, it's really important that you have a high resolution. You will see that in a moment. So I have 10 here. And now you can start adding your points here. Adding points is really simple. Click here on the curve. You get these points here. Every of these points can now be dragged around, and now you see what's happening here. We will explain how this curve maps here to the whole thing. In the moment we see this curve 2 times at the top and the bottom here. Every of these points here can be positioned here with the X value and the Y value. So if you want to work numerical, it's absolutely possible. And every of these points here has an interpolation. So if you hover with your mouse here over the interpolation of the point, this is the auto handle mode, here is the vector handle mode, then the free handle mode. So you get free handles here, which you can change. And to see the update in the viewport, you have to release your mouse. That's a little cavity here. And we also have here aligned free handles. So I told you that I want to explain how this here is mapped. So let's make something really simple. I make a really sharp curve here. And you see now that it looks a little bit symmetrical. It starts here, and then we go here to the maximizer, and it goes back here again. The reason for this is, if we go here to the shape, we have here fill mode, which is half. If you go here now through the whole thing and say, I only want to see the front, you see exactly one of these bevels. So this here is named front, and then we have also the back, which is this part here. And if we want to have front and back, we can take half. So it's a half bevel around our curve. And the last thing we have done now, we can have it full. So around the whole thing. And yeah, that's the explanation of that here. Let's go deeper here again into that. If you want to play more with that, we have some presets here, and we have here moldings because you need them for architectural stuff. We will talk about that a little bit later, but you also have steps here and support loops, which looks like this here. And let's take a molding here only to demonstrate something. Like I've said, it's really important that you have the right resolution. At the moment, you see something like that, but if you now bring the resolution up to 20, for example, you see that you get more details here. So you always have to make sure that you have enough resolution to show here the options which you have. If you want to make this more visible and you are here in this solid mode, what you can do is you go here to the shading options. I can select a matte cap. So you have here some nice matte caps. Let's take here the ceramic option here. So now you see it a little bit better. And then you can add cavity, for example. Now you see much better what's going on. You see here also the jagged things, which I talked with you about. So this is the curve itself. So we need this resolution here to increase. Now you see you get this much nicer. And if you have jagged lines around this bevel here, we talked about that, we have here the resolution of the bevel. So this profile here, like I've said, is new. It's really cool, I think. And one thing which you are maybe wondering, many people are doing things where they change the size now here. Every curve inside of Blender can have a radius. And this is a really cool feature. Let's talk about that really briefly. If I take a point here, for example, let's take this point here, and you open your N menu, you will see in the item section that this is our control point. And the options I show you now are always on the control points. So this is this control point, and you see here we have a tilt, we have a radius. And that's the cool thing. If you want now to change the radius of that, you can do it here numerically, or there is a radius tool here. And if I grab now here, you can change now the radius of this point. So this information is stored on the point itself, and this is then used by your bevel here. And this is really cool. So if you go here, for example, you can select this point and change the radius, for example, to 0, and you get here a tip of this curve. What if you want to close something? For this, we have a new feature inside of Blender 2.91, which is fill caps. It's a flat cap, so we can't change that. But if you want to have more, then you have to go into the radius thing and make your own stuff here. But the flat, I think it's a really good start here with the fill caps. If I now select all the points, press B again, I can go here to automatic, for example, to have nice automatic handles here. Then you can now start playing with that. So like I've said, the radius is one thing which you can now use for playing with this option. What you also can do is you can go in here and tilt the whole thing. So if you go here, for example, to the point, you have here a tilt option, which is now rotating this profile or bevel around. And this is the same like using this tilt tool. You see there's a tilt tool. If it's the fast hold down while you are working the shift. But in most cases, I find myself here using these controls here. So really nice options inside of the curve. You also can change here some options. For example, you can sample here the edges nicer in both directions and so on. There's also the interpolation for tilt and radius, which is sometimes important like here. You can open this up so the interpolation here is linear, but you also can go into easing for these two options. Then you get rid of these edges here. So I think that's enough for these features. So what you have seen now is the new profiles here for the curves and also the fill caps here. So last thing I want to demonstrate here now is how to make a molding. So this is one of the things which you have seen maybe in the new feature videos. So press the H key while we are in object mode to hide the thing. And let's take a really fast cube here. And I go into the edit mode and I want to change some things here. First thing is I want to scale it in this direction. And then we go here to the faces and delete these two faces because we don't need them. I want to have a molding here, for example, around that. Now, if you now want to have a molding which sits exactly here on these edges, we want to use these edges. And what you can do now is you can go here to the edge mode and select the edges which you like, these three for example, and then we can duplicate these edges into a new object in the moment we are in cube. So Shift D for duplication, but instead of then moving it, because Shift D is duplication and move, so we are now in the move step, we can click the right mouse button to cancel the movement. But the edges are still copied. Now we want to separate them into a new object, and this is the P key, separation. And I go in and say separate the selection. And now you see we have here a second cube. Now comes the interesting part. You see these icons here. I talked about these icons in the last tutorial. It's also a new feature inside of Blender 2.91. So you can now directly go into the edit mode of Cube 1. So you see you can click here. And this here is our molding. Yeah, so these are only the edges. If I deactivate here the cube, you will see that these here are the edges. Now, these edges are still, if we are in edit mode, polygon lines. So with polygon lines, you will see that we don't have these nice options because we need a curve for that. How to get a curve? You have selected here your edges, and then we go into object mode. And here under object, we can go to convert and convert these edges to curves. Wow. Now, these here are curves. You see it in the edit mode. Now you have all the options again, which we talked about. And now we can start playing with our new know-how. We can go here into, for example, the bevels. This is the first thing. And we go here to profile. But first, we need depth. So increase the depth here. Okay. Now, these are really broad moldings, but it's good that you see them here. Okay, now I will change here the whole thing to a crown molding. Okay, let's take a crown molding. But you see the curve here looks really complex, but this here doesn't look complex. Why? Because the resolution is not high enough. So let's increase the resolution. And now you see you have all the fine details of this crown molding. But it's going around the whole spline. So we talked about that before. You go now here up until you come here to the fills. And here we have now to find the right one. So let's go to front. Okay, that's the upper part here. Back is the right one. So now you have this thing here exactly like we want. And if you now want to make nice adjustments, you can do that. How to go back into the polygons world if you have something like that and you want to use it now in the polygons world. Same way like we brought our edges into the spline world. You select your curve object and you go to object, convert to, and here we have mesh. Before you do that, you can go here to the wireframe to see how it looks, and I think it is okay for me. So that's the thing you get later. So you go to mesh and that's it. Now you see this here is a mesh now, and now you can add your stuff if you want, or you can now model it like you are used to do. So that's it for today. I hope this lesson was useful for you. It was not only the new features, it was also a little bit about curves and how to bring curves to meshes, meshes to curves, and so on. So I hope you learned something. My name is Helge Maus from pixeltrain. If you want to support this channel and these free tutorials, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. And if you have $1 left, If you want, you can be a Patreon, so I'm really glad if you help me like this. Have a nice day and have fun with Blender.